It's kind of like the pinnacle of all Lexus builds to me. For me, it all started when I was in 7th grade, coming home off the school bus. And, we don't live in any crazy area or like that, but my neighbor had called me over and he's like, hey, can you help me out? And I was like, sure, got nothing else to do, little kid walking home from school. And he pulls me into his garage and he opens up the garage and I'm like, whoa. And for me, I was a kid with pretty much nothing. And he goes, hey, I just need some help putting this car together. I'm like, putting a car together? I have no idea what I'm doing, a little kid. It turns out it's a 911, but it's a kit car. So it's like this whole crate, engines apart, bodies apart, just boxes and bags everywhere. And for pretty much the next 7-8 months, we just put the car together after work every day, after school every day, and after work for him. And that just became a passion of mine, is like putting things together, figuring out how things work. Especially for somebody that didn't have very many means, it's kind of cool to work on something really nice for once, So that really got me into the whole car thing. And I think when it was my birthday, driver's license time, it was like, hey, Dad, what we're going to do? We're going to get a car. He's like, yeah, well, we don't have much, but we can give you some money to contribute towards the cause. So Dad gave me $500, took me to the junkyard. And with my limited skill set, we bought a Dodge Dart and put that thing together. And that was my car for like 5 months. After 5 months, it blew up like 3 times. So it wasn't a long-term situation. So I ended up getting like a Toyota Camry, which was cool, and then we got an ES300. So I started getting into the Japanese cars. But then I started working and I got a lot more money in my pocket, and I was really bad with money. So I went and I bought a E36 M3 sedan. So from there, I got way too many speeding tickets with that car. So I sold it, and we ended up getting a 2001 Lexus GS300. Which I still own today. It's a black one, and it's all carbon fibered out. And funny thing about that story is back when we joined the forums back then, you couldn't like capitalize letters, and you couldn't like space or underscore anything. So whatever we read was one whole word, right? So I wanted to be Carbon GS. So if you put those things together, it says Carbongs. So until this day, people meet me like, hey, it's Carbongs. And I'm like, yeah. And they'll always, be like, hey, I'm like, no, it's just Carbon GS. So that's kind of a fun little story. It's still there now. I still sign up for things as Carbongs. But it went from building that car to the way I wanted it. It's a low and slow type of car. It's on air ride. I've got some really cool relationships, sponsors-wise, with that. I used to go to car shows all year round, me and my buddies with all the different car clubs I was with. We'd go to 10, 20. One year went to 34 car shows in one year. So that was crazy, driving all up and down the East Coast. Went out to SEMA for my first time, not with the car. That's kind of on the bucket list, is get the car out there for once. So there's been this car that I've been chasing for years. I know the original owner. I know the guy who built it. I know all the parts. It's kind of like the pinnacle of all Lexus builds to me. It's got the right motors, got the 2Js boosted. The car's been converted, frame off restoration. It's been painted white. It was originally dark green. The interior's all done. There's a beautiful trunk set up. It's just all around great car. So I got my buddy that owns the car, then in SEMA. So I kind of bribed him. It's like, hey man, I'll get you a pass and all this stuff. You cover your own flight, and we got a good hotel room. It's all free. So he shows up. And he's really soft-spoken, and he's not the Vegas type, if you know what I mean. So we drag him around SEMA for a whole 2-3 days, and he's tired. He's just done. He gets into the hotel room that night, and we're like, hey man, just talking his brains off. And he gets super tired, and I think he's like halfway asleep when I was like, hey, you've got a couple cars in the garage that just haven't moved. They're probably deteriorating. You got things leaking, tires going. You get flat spots and dry rot. And he goes, where are you going with this? So I'm like, I've got a completely good open garage spot for this car. So I was like, why don't you just, let me take it off your hands? And, push comes to shove, and we're talking left and right, and he just eventually says, sure, why not? And I was like, can you say that one more time? Put up my phone and videotape them saying it. And he's like, yep, so it's a contract, right? So literally, when we got back from SEMA, from Vegas, I borrowed my buddy's truck and trailer, and we went up to his house and put it in the trailer and loaded it, brought it home. And we started putting it back together. And surely enough, it was kind of run down. The motor hadn't run in about a year and a half, 2 years. It was smoking like crazy. It was dripping oil. So I ended up taking everything apart in this $20,000 motor, taking everything apart and rebuilding every little piece we could, basically rebuilding the motor. And I found out that I actually still knew the original owner, so we messaged him, and he was able to give me some details on the car, and did a little more digging and figured out, certain parts of the car were actually very custom to the build. So instead of replacing it with new parts, I decided to just keep it true to where it was. So a lot of people even today are like, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this with the car. I was like, well, for me, it was kind of like the car was the way it was, and that's how I want to retain it. So for me, I just wanted to make it drivable and enjoy it, and give it, the opportunity to be back on the road and go to shows and just share it with everybody else. But I'm still building the black car, and I think that might be the money pit where it is. To keep up with all my friends with really expensive cars, you gotta have to dump a lot of money into older cars. So it's still fun showing up at all the different events, Caffeine and Octane, all those different monthly events, car shows. But I guess that's been my passion, is to do it myself whenever I can. It's always hard to, take money out and pay somebody else to do something that you can do yourself.